Sometimes it gets pretty simple. Ball has to go in the basket. That's what the game's about. It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. Today, the focus, it's on our youngsters, Brice, Keontae, and Taylor, and the ball has to go in the basket. Sometimes the ball has to go in the basket. Little wins along the way. We'll talk about that for the Utah Jazz and what happened in the NBA last night. The Rockets are done. It's over. A nice little flurry, but they will not put it together. We'll talk about all that coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, as well as YouTube. And to the everydayers, thank you very much. We're out of stickers except for these three that, if I remember, I will take to the arena next week. We have 2 more home games. It's kind of sad. It's so funny. You've lost 10 straight or whatever it is now, maybe 11, 10 straight, like 21 of 24, something like that, right? I'm not keeping track. We've lost 10 straight. We've lost 21 of 24. And yet, I don't want the season to end. Like, it's super fun. Watching the team, watching them try to put things together, learn. They're certainly overmatched, but it's still a great deal of fun. And last night was not particularly close, and so you obviously like them to compete more. But it's still, it's still great. All right. Few things. There was no postcast last night because Ron Boone had no voice. I don't know if you didn't. Some people were bummed that it wasn't there, and I appreciate that. But Ron Boone had 0 voice last night, so then it really is just the exact same thing as me doing the show that I'm about to do right now. Let me touch on first thing, and we can overanalyze this and that and all these things, but you know what it comes down to? Like, the ball's got to go in the hoop. Like, we sometimes get so complicated. And the fact that Brice Sensabaugh, after going 0 for 8, 0 for 7 for 3 in the last 2 games, scored 22 points in each game. He's 14 of 28 from the field. He's 11 of 19 from 3. It's probably not, a standard he's going to set at shooting 50% from 3 and shooting 50% from the field. But it is the reason that I'm generally excited about him. He put the ball in the basket in college at a really, really high rate. He's got to figure out how he's going to do it, where he's going to do it, whether he can use his body, all these different things. There's no question of that. But he's got to put the ball in the basket. And, that's actually what it comes down to. Frankly, I'm the biggest Ochai Agbaji fan in the world, but at some point, he's not putting the ball in the basket. He's shooting for the season now, 31% from 3 and 41% from the field. And since he's gone to Toronto and been playing 22 minutes a night like he did with us, he's shooting 24% from 3. You can talk about everything else, and there's a million things about Ochai Agbaji to love. The ball's got to go in the basket. Isaac Okoro, who did not play last night for Cleveland, is this incredible physical specimen. One of the most incredible, I've never seen a player in college blow up screens better than he did. And defensively, still today, ball doesn't always go in the basket. It's why what Taylor's doing right now gets a little exciting. Because Taylor's settled himself down and suddenly shooting 36% from 3. And 36% from 3 is that's bona fide. If Taylor Hendricks can shoot 36% from 3 and continue to develop a little bit of a dribble game and continue a little bit of a being able to play off cuts and slices and movement, and then go get himself a few buckets a night on offensive rebounds and things of that nature, and hit a few threes a night, probably take 5 of them, he's hit 41% his last 10 games. Taylor's last 10 games, he is 46% for the field and 41% from 3, playing 29 minutes a night. Like I said either yesterday on our pregame show or yesterday here, like I wanted to see him make a bigger impact. It was interesting. Will Hardy kind of reiterated exactly that comment after the game last night. Like, I just want to see him make some plays. I feel like he's just kind of running around out there, not using all of his skills and athleticism to make plays. But again, Taylor needs this. Like, he's putting the ball in the basket. It's 41% for the last 10 games from three is pretty exciting with Taylor Hendricks. And let's see if Brice Sensabaugh, who was one of the best, maybe the best shooter in the draft, like you can tell when Brice Sensabaugh shoots that ball's going in. Will Hardy talked about in pregame last night that they're working on his footwork, and with both Taylor and Brice, because if you can get your footwork right early and beforehand, then you can turn a moderately open shot into an open shot and a, contested shot into a moderately open shot, and you can get things off faster. And I think that's what you're hoping. See, now when you start working on that footwork, I know Ochai was working on some footwork things because Ochai actually just changed his footwork all the time. Like, it's really hard to then continue to make shots. So it's impressive to me. These guys are working on things during the day, trying to figure things out, altering the way they have done things their whole lives, and then going out and playing against the world's best athletes and figuring and playing pretty well. So that's exciting. Now, I mean, honestly, on the other side of this is Keontae. The ball is not going in the basket. I think he's exhausted. I think there's probably some outside factors, but like, again, I'm going to hold, like, it's simple. Like, you've got to basket. Like, he has 300, he's shooting. Sorry, the constant ads just starting. He's shooting 38% from the field and 32% from three. He's in a danger zone. That's not the greatest thing ever for him. He has shown signs where he busted out of that danger zone for a while. And Will talked about this as well. Like, if you go back and look at Keontae, when he's playing his best was kind of 20 minutes a night in roles that were appropriate. His shooting in the month since March 1st is below 30% from three, and that's really carried his own numbers down. If you go back and look at February and January, when he wasn't always starting and was playing a fewer minutes, he was a little bit more reasonable in some of it. Though January, when he actually came off the bench in those 16 games and was only playing 22 minutes, he wasn't particularly efficient offensively. So, yeah, I mean, he's got the same thing. And he didn't put the ball in the basket in college, actually. So there isn't actually a track record for Keontae that the ball goes in the basket. Keontae's track record in college was 38%, I believe, and 34% from three, 79% free throw shooter. So, these are the kind of the bottom lines to it. Like, sometimes I think we get overcomplicated. And my point on this is, like, the ball just got to go in the basket. And Brice Sensabaugh got into his bag last night, played like I think he's comfortable usually playing, and played like with this kind of pizzazz to his game last night and freedom that is his natural offensive game of how he plays. And it might be that's what he turns out to be. I mean, when you're drafted 28th in the NBA, the feeling is, hey, you're going to have to change your game. You're going to have to learn how to pass. You're going to have to learn how to play with your teammates. He's tried to do all that last night with the amount of guys we had out. Like, Brice, go to work. And we might just see Brice go to work for the next 5 games. Is it 5, 6? What do we have left? 6. For the next 6 games. Because he actually looked, that's where he looked best. But also, it's what we need out of him right now. And then he looked really, really good doing it. So it'll be fun to watch Brice here for the next few games. And I think he's going to get to go back to his high usage Ohio State playing style. And last night, with 14 shots, he still got 4 assists. The night before he had 3. The night before, when he went 0 for 8, he had 5. So we're seeing him pass the basketball, which the Jazz front office has been really excited about. And then we saw him rebound a little bit. Taylor is not rebounded the last 2 nights. So, I'm sure the coaching staff would rather have Taylor rebound than hit 40% of his threes. But I'll kind of hold to that. Brice was 48% from the field and 41% from 3. He played 25 minutes a night, and I think took about 15, 16 shots a night. Like, he got him up at Ohio State, scored 16 points a game with limited minutes. So it'll be interesting to see. I've got high hopes for him to see what he can do. We'll talk about one of the kind of truths of the NBA that's never talked about. And then little tiny wins is what we're going to look for when you've lost 10 straight. We'll do that when we continue next on Locked on Jazz. Wednesday edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by my friends over at Intercap Lending. That means my good friend Steve Carter and all that they have done over at Intercap. I got to send more people over to Steve recently. It makes my day. Then it was actually, I think I shared this story that Brock Worthen, who's the president, was in a meeting, and turned out he was with one of my closest friends, and they chatted back and forth, and it was fun to have those two guys who I just think so highly of, both and how they do business, meeting each other and doing work. Steve's amazing, and Locked On listeners have been the recipient of Steve's great customer service over at Intercap Lending. So if you're looking for a loan right now and you need help lending, then Steve Carter is your guy. We'll set you up with the introduction. So feel free to email me at dlock09@gmail.com. Let's go to Zoe Gomez. My experience with Intercap Lending and Steve was nothing short of amazing. Not only were they very timely and responsive when it came to communication, but they efficiently got my significant other and I approved and funded with a couple of weeks. If you want stress-free, amazing experience, I highly suggest Steven and Intercap. Thank you, Steven. That is Steve Carter over at Intercap Lending. He is truly that great all the time. He has been consistently that great in all he's ever done with us. So email me first at dlock09@gmail.com, dlock09@gmail.com, and I'll give you the VIP connection to Steve. If you want me not in your business, just call him at 385-800-8528. That's 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com. Today's show is also brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors, the MVP for your guaranteed fit. eBay Motors takes care of you with the guaranteed fit. Pretty great. Passion, drive, patience, the formula for winning. Also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, leveled up to peak performance. Roof racks, exhaust kits, superchargers, LED headlights, whatever it might be, eBay Motors has you covered. 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay, guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need, the prices you want. It's easy to make up your car in the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available for U.S. customers. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. Thank you so much. And guess what? It is time to make the switch. If you're watching Fox or ESPN on your TV all day, turn down the volume because they're shouting all day. Yeah, you've been there. So make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. Free 24/7 streaming channel programmed to you every day, bringing you the biggest stories without all the screaming. It's the local experts of Locked On Sports, bringing you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and free on Amazon Fire TV channels. It's Locked On Sports Today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So if you listen to people talk about the NBA, they'll actually always tell you that, oh, it's a fourth quarter league. You just don't have to watch till the fourth quarter. The truth is just watch the first quarter. The truth is just watch the first quarter. If you go through every season and you want to know who the best teams in the NBA are, go to first quarters. Okay, here are the best first quarter teams in the NBA this year. Boston is plus 18 for 100 possessions. So if they played their first quarters, they'd win every game by 18. Kill people. Denver's plus 14. Those will be the two teams in the NBA Finals in all likelihood. New Orleans is plus 12. Okay, that's like eye-opening to me. Now, New Orleans doesn't close well. Willie Green runs great sets, but every time they're in a set, they're not in a set. They don't seem to close it very well. So there are some concerns there. Minnesota is the fourth best, and the Knicks are the fifth best first quarter team. Milwaukee, interestingly enough, is the team that, for all the thinking how good they are, is not a very good first quarter team. And I think it really shows. Since All-Star break, Milwaukee has been better, though. So that's like, since Doc took over, kind of changed their team, they're the fourth best first quarter team since All-Star break. We're 29th in the league in first quarter since All-Star break. It feels like it. Like we're getting hammered early in games. And honestly, that's kind of when games are decided. And it's a little hard when you're down double digits, or as we were in Houston, down 20 the whole time, on what you're evaluating after that point. Like, it's important our guys stay engaged and they play, but the other team is probably not as glued in. Few interesting things about first quarter since All-Star break. Minnesota's -6. They're 13-7 and they're winning games, but they're -6 in first quarters. And first quarters are really, truly a better indicator than just about anything else on who's the best teams. If you go back to last year and look at it on first quarters, Boston was number 1. Memphis was 2, actually, for then they had the injuries. The Bucks were 3. Denver was 4. Denver was only 53-29 last year. Remember, they weren't the number 1 or 2 seed. But they had the 4th best first quarters in the NBA. So Memphis, who had the injuries that knocked them out. Milwaukee ran into Boston and lost. And Denver was the best team in first quarters, and they went to the NBA Finals. We do 21-22. Memphis again was the best team in the first quarters. They then fell back. Milwaukee was the second best. They won the title. They beat Boston along the way. Now, interestingly, was that Minnesota was the next best, but Phoenix was the team after that, and then Utah, who was 49-33 that year, and Phoenix went on to play in the NBA Finals that year. The bubble year, I think it's a little different just because things are a little funky in that next year, but the first quarters was the year when we went 52-20 and were really, really good in that year after COVID, the 72-game season. Denver was actually better than we were. Philadelphia, New York. That year, the first quarter kind of rule of life did not hold. And the bubble year, which is the Miami Laker final, Miami was the best first quarter team in the NBA that year. The Lakers were the best Western Conference first quarter team that year. This holds pretty well. Like if you go through the years. So this would tell you right now that the best first quarter team is Boston in the West, and the second best is Denver. But the Pelicans, then Minnesota, and New York are making a little quibble toward it. But Minnesota and New York are really far off. The Pelicans, it's pretty big difference actually. Boston's plus 18, Denver's plus 14, Pelicans are plus 12, Minnesota's plus 6, and New York's plus 6, and then the Thunder plus 6. So really, what would tell you is that New Orleans is closer to Boston and Denver than you think. But Boston, Denver, as we kind of know, are just a good deal better than everyone else. All right, one thing on the Jazz, and I'm in the first half. I mean, this was kind of silly. They scored every single time in the first 7 minutes. 7 minutes a game, they scored every single time they crossed half court. Okay. Like at some point, that's silly, right? Our defense is overmatched right now, but does have to get better. And we were doing something where the roller was wide open and our weak side help was just crazy, crazy late. And Jared Allen and Evan Mobley just annihilated us on rolls to the basket. Very similar to the way Chet Holmgren did in Oklahoma City. And, you're looking for little tiny victories in this, is it didn't happen in the second half. So 2 messages here, though I did this in the order I meant. Like first quarters are what matters, right? I'm not about to try to tell you something else. First quarters are what matters. So the fact that the Jazz are getting blasted in first quarters and we're down, we were down 15, allowed 40 points in the first quarter. It does negate a little bit of like what happens the rest of the night. I'm not going to be Pollyanna to the point where I'm trying to tell you otherwise. But I do think, every game's a learning experience and has some value. And in the sense that the Jazz got just riddled in the first half on pick and rolls time and time again. And then in the second half, they were able to slow down and alter what was going on with Jared Allen and what was going on with Evan Mobley is a pretty good sign. Like those, because, or at least it's just what should be happening, right? You should be seeing those, the evolution of that. Is that, hey, you go into halftime, you see a bunch of video, you work on it, and then you try to get it fixed. I don't have the exact numbers, but the pick numbers were 1.2 points per possession, which is super high, but I'm convinced it had to be about 1.7, 1.8 in the first half. Their drive numbers were really, really big. We're just having a hard time guarding people right now, and with their isolations numbers. So, frankly, we're having a hard time guarding people. We're not a very good defensive team. We're young. You see the mistakes with some regularity, but hopefully you'll see you guys figure it out. One thing we talked about was Keontae's pick and roll. It was interesting. He ran a few with Samanic to success like that. Samanic is a pop. Because Kessler went out with the broken nose, he ended up running a few with Yurtseven. And they weren't terrible, actually. They were there were steps. Like that's an important one for Keontae right now is how does he learn how to play with a rolling big? And that's certainly what you have in Omer Yurtseven is a rolling big. And so those little kind of moments, actually, I do think matter here. And I thought that was good last night that, hey, if you kind of run through the box scores of last night, I can give you points. I can't give you pick and roll by quarter. I'd have to run through every single one of them, which I guess I could have done. So apologize. But the defense got better, and the defense got better because they took away something that they got riddled by in the first half that they had to try to fix. And to me, that's a little bit of what we're looking for at this point. I definitely doesn't, making that excited about it. But I mean, the offensive rating But Cleveland in the first quarter was a 167. That means they scored 1.67 points every time they crossed half court. That's ridiculous. By the second quarter, it was 104, which is like really good. And then the Jazz in the third quarter played really, really good basketball. And it was down to 120. And then the fourth quarter, it kind of fizzled out, went back up to 128. But the opening part of the third quarter, the Jazz played really, really, really good basketball. Moved the ball, got it down to 8 or 9, did what they were supposed to do. Had a 136 offensive rating. Like, it was impressive across the board by everyone. And that's what Will's going to bank on, is that you have those moments where you actually do play right. They see what happens when they do it, and then they build off that here in the final 6 games of the year. We'll run around the NBA here for a second as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Fire TV. See, here's my little Fire TV app. And my Fire TV is on and bringing me all of Locked On Sports Today and all sorts of other great things. In fact, I get my streamer through Fire TV. So I'm on Amazon Fire TV and using it exclusively as kind of my hub for all TV. I'm doing it with the Fire Stick. Fire TV is your destination for sports, lives, games, highlights, and in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experience, smart TV, as well as that stick I just talked about. So I do it through the stick. You plug it into the back of your TV. It provides access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as live and free TV, whether it's opening weekend, basketball, baseball, college basketball, whatever you want. It's on Fire TV. They've recently created Fire TV channels. So that's what Locked On Sports Today is. So you scan down and you go to Fire TV channels and you click on it. And then from there, you've got all sorts of fun things that include Locked On Sports Today. You can grab your favorite NBA team, or my favorite team's the Giants. So if I click on the San Francisco Giants right now, I get the condensed highlights of their lost game to the Dodgers last night, which I don't really want to see. And then I also get Locked On Giants comes up for me, which I do want to see, as Ben Kapchik gives me the rundown on that as I clicked on it. So a lot of really interesting and great content, including Locked On Sports Today. And it's all there. So go check it out. Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. That's Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. I need to find the pause button. There we go. I had to pause Locked On Giants. It just started after I did that. So the NBA is crazy right now. Super fun. And all the playoff races. Unfortunately, we're not in them. If you are following our draft position, I guess I can update you on that a little bit. If you haven't been to Tankathon, it's a great site. And we're waiting for Brooklyn to win a game. We are now tied with Brooklyn for 8th. We need to be 9th to make sure we're going to get our pick. We're in really comfortable shape of that. We're going to get our pick. We'll be drafting in the draft. And as of right now, at 8th, we have a 24% chance of getting a top 4 pick. Obviously, this draft is not loaded with high-end talent at the top, but that's still kind of where we sit. If Brooklyn can win another 1 or 2 games, we'll be solidly in 8, and we'll see whether or not we have a 5% chance of the number 1 pick at that point. From the rest of the league, there's some kind of crazy stuff going on. So, and one is Joel Embiid came back last night. So Philadelphia is sitting at 8th right now and going to have to play in a playing game, likely against Miami, possibly against Indiana. And then if they win their first playing game, then they get Milwaukee in the first round with Joel Embiid back. Wow. If they lose that playing game and then win their next one against either Chicago or Atlanta, they get Boston. Boston has like a chance that they're going to have to do Philadelphia, New York, either Milwaukee or Miami to get to the finals. Like, Boston's way better than everyone else, but that could be quite the run. Cleveland's win last night was mammoth for them. They go and play Phoenix, LA. LA coming up here. They're a game and a half up on Orlando and New York, and Orlando and New York are tied in the Eastern Conference for the 4-5, which is interesting. All right, over in the West, this is nuts. Denver has a half-game lead over the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves for the 1 seed. The projections at this point are that Minnesota is going to finish with 56.9 wins. Denver's going to finish with 56.9 wins. And Oklahoma City is going to finish with 56.7 They may all tie. Minnesota is the odds, according to Basketball Reference, is the odds. I haven't looked at playoff status. Is the odds on favorite to end up with the number 1 seed at this point. That would be wild. I've been a year off. According to this is the same for playoffstatus.com. They have the Timberwolves at 41%. The most likely is the number 1 seed. But I mean, it's minuscule. The Clippers are sitting at 4 and kind of comfortably at this point. They actually could probably rest some guys, not play everything out. They're going to be 4. They have a 2-game lead. Dallas and New Orleans are 5-6. And I don't actually know what the advantage of being 5 or being 6 is at this point. I don't know who you want to play in the first round between Denver, Minnesota, Thunders, and Clippers. I guess you want to stay out of Denver's bracket, but you have no idea where Denver's bracket is. So you just want to stay in front of Sacramento and Phoenix, who are tied a game behind New Orleans, and then the Lakers and the Warriors. Now, what happened last night is that the Rockets season really came to an end. The Rockets lost their 2nd straight after their win streak, and they lost to Minnesota. And they have this big game coming up against the Warriors, but it's not a big game anymore because Golden State ended Dallas's win streak last night with a 104-100 win along the way. Sacramento got a monster win against the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard didn't play, 109-95, and then Denver did what it was supposed to despite Wembanyama, but Oklahoma City lost to Philadelphia, who had Joel Embiid back. So games that matter today, Minnesota is hosting Toronto, who's trying to lose. Oklahoma City's on a back-to-back in Boston. Now, if Oklahoma City were to pull an upset there, that swings everything. Denver's off. As we mentioned, the Clippers are somewhat set. Dallas and New Orleans. New Orleans plays at home against Orlando, would be expected to win. But again, I'm not really sure what matters about 5-6. You're just really trying to hold off Sacramento and Phoenix, and Cleveland is in Phoenix tonight. So every night we've just got something that matters. Tomorrow night, Sacramento starts an East Coast road trip in New York where they've got to find a way to get wins. We have that Golden State Houston game that doesn't really matter, but Denver plays the Clippers in LA. That does matter. And then we head out to play the Clippers the next night on the back end of a back-to-back for the Clippers. So it's going to be fun in the West to see how the plays. Too bad the Rockets' fun little flurry is really over though, because they're now back 3 games and don't have the tiebreaker against the Warriors. So it all has come to an end. And, give the Warriors and the Lakers credit. We were making that run at them. We were at 500. The Lakers are now 10 games above 500, and the Warriors are now 7 games above 500. Hard to believe. Certainly, we wouldn't be 29-47, but hard to believe even if we hadn't made any deadline trades that we would be 10 games above 500 or 7 games above 500 to even get in the play at this point. All right, that is Locked On Jazz today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well, and we will come back to you tomorrow on a Thursday edition of the program. I might do pack points gained, pass the old name for it, tomorrow so we can have more time for mailbag on Friday and have your Ask LOJ. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Jazz. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national sports channel, Locked On Sports Today. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. Have a great one.